Well, welcome. I'm going to be looking at the video, congressional interview with Christopher Wray, the new director of the FBI. Had a lot of fun doing it. I hope you guys enjoyed it as well. Looking for feedback. I have a lot of interest in this topic, and I'd like to expand and have a regular show, regular sort of routine. 2, 3 times a week, I come up with a video of some meaningful interview or public appearance. So I would really appreciate the feedback. Otherwise, have fun and let's keep going. See you on the other side. Hello. All right, all right, all right. We've got ourselves Mr. Wray, newly appointed director of the FBI by Trump. We've got ourselves some turbulent times. All eyes are on this man. We have a flurry of accusations of improper behavior by the FBI. This guy just took the helm. Uh, this is not just about the FBI isn't working efficiently. His predecessors, both of them, a man named Mueller and a man named Comey, back to back, are both accused of serious crimes before him. Mueller is presently active in a special counsel investigation. He's the lead investigator of such counsel. He is connected in deep ways to Uranium One. Comey is connected in deep ways to Hillary investigation and all sorts of other botched investigations. So Wray is taking over the helm of a ship that's both under attack and is under suspicion of being very corrupt. So broken boat, sinking, and the few people that are still on board, if there are good sailors left, they're going down with the ship, and the corrupt people are just jumping ship. So let's see what he says. I know nothing about Christopher Wray. I watched maybe 5-second clips in other news commentaries about him. But that's good. I've watched a lot of this video already, and I am not going to play the entire 50 minutes. The entire testimony was 5 hours long, but I saw several awesome examples, uh, things that we can key on his body language in the first 15 minutes or so of this video. They do something fantastic in this video. They put the camera on both Mr. Wray and whoever is asking a question at the same time. Now this is a game changer from sort of body language analysis when all you get is the camera on the person as they're answering the question. You're missing half the story. Their reaction to the question or comment is very important. So, pardon me. So I'm gonna play it and I'll pause when it's relevant.
Wray taking questions right now in the House Judiciary Committee. Remember, the president just said the FBI is in tatters. Let's listen.
Put out as a justification for closing the investigation of the former Secretary of State.
Well, as I said, Mr. Chairman, I believe the standard is gross negligence. I leave it to others to conclude whether extremely careless and gross negligence are the same thing. But I will say that the particulars of the investigation and the decisions that were made and whether or not it was handled appropriately is, as I think it should be, the subject of an outside independent investigation by the Inspector General. And I look forward to his findings, as I'm sure the committee does as well.
In July of 2016, the State Department revealed.
So right away, I didn't like him. A, he didn't answer any questions. B, this conflation of gross negligence or extremely careless and the statute, there's no requirement of negligence. Mishandling classified data, and mishandling simply means you have access to it because you went through a security screening process. You've been given classified data and it leaked out of your hand. It fell out of your pocket. You left it on a laptop. You used a coffee shop. uh, your device gets stolen and you don't notify it. I mean, there's all sorts of ways that you can mishandle classified data. And it doesn't mean that you're always going to go to jail for it, but if data that's been trusted into your hands that is deemed classified, secret, top secret, for your eyes only, falls into the hands of other people, the moment you realize you lost control of that data, of those documents, you notify authorities. And it's not just because it's processed. Sometimes this classified data is regarding position of troops, regarding, you know, trip schedules of people, things that could actually have a real world effect if discovered by the wrong parties. I mean, we have a process in place. If classified data leaks, there's a whole team that screens the classified data and notifies the agency so they can go down to from data to agency to active cases or active deployments, right? It doesn't matter which agency is involved. If this data being compromised compromises the operation, they have to notify those parties. There could be people that could die because they've been found out to be covert agents. Covert agents. So again, I don't like anybody who tries to take the conversation into, well, she didn't meet the requirement. That's not true. She met the requirement. The requirement is she mishandled data. So here comes Mr. Wray conflating again gross negligence with extreme carelessness and so on. It doesn't matter what the word you use. She mishandled data, classified data. So here comes Wray reinforcing that statue baloney that the requirement wasn't met. And then he backs up into, well, there is an investigation in place. But the fact that he already stated that the two statements have the same final effect in language is a misnomer, because gross negligence is actually spelled out as a statute, while extreme carelessness is not. Neither one should make a difference, but he tries to bring that up and put that into the sentence, into the record. It does get better, but my first impression of this guy was not good. You watch his lips, they're pulled in, his mouth is shut. He's made his statement. He's going to say he took the cookie cutter statement, put it out, and shut up. Look at his face. He's locked. Overall, his attitude is very relaxed. He's in control. He's in charge. He's very confident about himself right now.
Revealed that former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton exchanged on her unsecured private server.
Gotta say that double mouth smack there was all right. I did it. It's a smug, self-satisfying. No, it's not smug. It's self-satisfying. Every time he answers a question, in his mind, literally every word he says, he knows is being judged. So when he can complete a full answer and not screw up, he's happy about it. He's ready for the next one.
Nearly 24 top secret emails with 3 State Department officials. The classification top secret.
That was kind of interesting. Well, when you watch these things and you know a little more about the subject matter, these congressmen, they do this very often. They will conflate stories and dump them out there. You see later on a woman specifically calling out, saying that, since Russia hacked the DNC, well, there's more proof that Russia did not hack the DNC, that Russia hacked it. But she says it as part of a larger question. Mr. Wray doesn't address it. So it's a way to get things into record. But what you see a lot is when that's happening, the person in charge, Mr. Wray, he's trying to make a decision about how to handle it. He could make a big argument out of these things or not, but he's trying to parse it out. And what he's going to try to do is give the least problematic answer possible, given the context of the question.
Means, in part, the unauthorized disclosure of which reasonably could be expected to cause exceptionally grave damage to national security. Can you explain to the American people how the FBI could not be investigating actions taken by individuals like those named in 2016? Jacob Sullivan, Cheryl Mills, William Burns, that threatened grave damage to the national security?
Well, as I said, Mr. Chairman, the handling of the investigation and whether or not, in particular, whether or not decisions made in that investigation were the product of any improper consideration.
Okay, everything from how quickly he reached over to the microphone button to answer, to his body stance that didn't change 1 inch until just now. This answer has been rehearsed. He knew that that's going to be something that he's going to have to address. So he does the usual, look, there's an investigation going. The FBI works properly. If it didn't work properly in this particular session, we're going to find out. The IG is running an investigation, blah, blah. He basically deflects.
Considerations is precisely what the outside independent inspector general is investigating. And when we get his findings, I will look and see what appropriate action we can take at the FBI in response to that.
Can anyone on this committee set up a private server now and conduct classified business on it, since not a single person has been prosecuted or held accountable for the Clinton email investigation?
No.
Okay, there is hope, right? There is absolute hope here. Many folks have been asked that specific question. Comey, Loretta Lynch, and their answers were muddled, not clear, uncertain. Don't get me started.
Thank you.
Loretta Lynch is just, anyway, he says no. Classified data, private server, no. That's good. We needed to hear that. Very good.
Director Wray, what are you doing to ensure that the top ranks of the Federal Bureau of Investigation are cleared of individuals who are tainted by bias or those who have exhibited indiscretion by failing to demonstrate the integrity Americans expect from their top law enforcement officials?
Well, the first thing I'm doing is respecting the outside independent investigations that are underway. My preference is to be one of these people who is not a act first and ask questions later kind of guy, but an ask questions first and then act kind of guy. And so I think these matters are being looked at.
He's a very personable guy, light smile, use the sentence that people are aware of, ask questions first, act later, act now, ask questions later. Very nice, made good eye contact. He's in a relaxed position right now because the pressure is on the investigator. The pressure is going to turn back to him when the answers come back. What is he going to do about the findings? And that's when we're going to find out who he really is. For now, he is what he is. We know what we know.
As they should be, by somebody outside the FBI. And when those findings come to me, I will take appropriate action if necessary. In the meantime, I am emphasizing in every audience I can inside the Bureau that our decisions need to be made based on nothing other than the facts and the law and our rules and our processes and our core values, and not based on any political considerations by any side of the aisle.
Again, he's rehearsed this. He's said this sentence in a variety of ways in different settings. I mean, not that I know it, because I watched it. I just know because of the way he's so comfortable saying it. This is something that he must have said several times. Even if it's in front of the mirror, he's very comfortable with that.
Thank you. Does the FBI obtain...
Again, mouth shut, little couple of empty swallows, empty chews. Very happy that he delivered another good sentence with no mistakes. He's a little unhappy that he made one light mistake there where he didn't finish the sentence, and that's probably what he's upset about. Again, he keeps ending sentences with his mouth very closed. Lips are extremely tight. You force your lips tight when you don't want to say anything else. So, again, maybe he's just happy that he completed another tough question and did it successfully.
A warrant before accessing and reading Americans' email?
It depends on the situation, but yes.
So, can you explain why you obtain a criminal search warrant before reading an email of someone under investigation for a crime?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Can you explain why you obtain a criminal search warrant before reading an email of someone under investigation for a crime?
Yeah, that conversation was going to go nowhere. So I'm going to go through and pick up a few significant answers. I'm going to show a couple of questions here on Mr. Nedler, a Democrat. You notice that the tone and the engagement of Democrats versus Republicans is very different. The Democrats are all focused on process and, you know, it's almost like they're lawyers trying to interpret the law and get confirmation from Christopher Wray, which he smartly just diffuses, pushes off, and doesn't want to deal with it. But he's very engaged. I really like that he takes them on head on. There was no fear. His stance has not changed. Uh, I I have some suspicions about uh, his understanding and his own thought system, but I'm gonna save it for further, for later time. I have a feeling that this guy has more to show that he's holding back.
Over the summer, in an interview with the New York Times, President Trump stated, quote, "When Nixon came along, out of courtesy, the FBI started reporting to the Department of Justice. But the FBI person really reports directly to the President of the United States," close quote. Director Wray,
I mean, you see what they're doing here, right? Are they? They're creating the possibility that the president could be leading the actions of the FBI.
you have one direct report to the executive branch. To whom do you directly report?
I directly report to the Deputy Attorney General, who then reports to the Attorney General.
Thank you. Has President Trump ever asked you to sidestep the chain of command and report directly to him?
No.
Also, over the summer, former Director Comey testified that during a private dinner, President Trump told him, quote, "I need loyalty. I expect loyalty." Has President Trump ever asked you for loyalty?
I have never been asked by the President to take any kind of loyalty oath. My loyalty is to the Constitution, to the laws of this country, and to the good men and people of America.
Thank you. Last week, former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn pleaded guilty to one felony count of lying to the FBI about conversations he had with the Russian ambassador. I would like to put President Trump's initial Twitter reaction up on the screen. I won't read it, but I will simply say he claims here to have known that General Flynn committed a crime at the time General Flynn was fired. There's some controversy as to whether the president actually wrote this tweet. The White House later claimed that it came from the president's private attorney. But I'm not sure that it matters who wrote it, given the Department of Justice's litigating position that these tweets are, quote, "official statements of the President of the United States," close quote. A few clarifying questions, Mr. Director. In your experience at the Department of Justice, have you ever prosecuted a case involving a charge of obstruction of justice?
Yes.
And second,
Now, he has changed his stance slightly here. He knows this is a hot button issue. Now, he's not a public personality, and he's going from basically obscurity to front and center in what could possibly, end up in an impeachment process. The Democrats, the leadership, are trying to find out what side of the fence is Wray going to lean on. Is he going to stay neutral? Is he going to help Democrats or Republicans? That's what this is about. That's what Wray has. He's a little more cautious here. He wrinkled his eyebrows. He's staying very focused on what Mr. Nadler is saying. He does not want to make a blunder.
Sections 1503, 1505, and 1512 of Title 18 make it a crime if someone corruptly, quote, obstructs.
Look how tight. I mean, this guy. All right, he definitely has experience in the fact that he knows how to hold back his thoughts. He knows when to shut up, and he makes the effort to stay to keep his mouth shut. Great example as a reference point is there's several folks behind him who can see their lips. Their seals are shut. They're not pressed shut. Ray's lips are pressed shut.
Obstructs, influences, or impedes any official proceeding, close quote. What does it mean to corruptly obstruct, influence, or impede an official proceeding?
Congressman, that would require me to get into kind of a legal discussion. It's been a while since I've looked at the case law on the subject.
Very friendly. He believes right now that he's safe. He hasn't done anything. He hasn't screwed up yet. So for him to appear diligent, responsible, to appear that he's going to be able to take on the job and do everything that he needs to be done, for him to gain confidence, all he has to do here is defer answers. He has to seem in control, in charge. He has to get people to trust that he's going to be doing his job, to leave him alone. So answer every question, don't dodge, defer any answers related to Clinton, to Trump, to the investigative counsel, and his hands are clean, right? That's why he's so confident. He hasn't screwed up yet.
I do know, have somebody who's been both a line prosecutor and a senior Justice Department official and a defense attorney, that sometimes the language of that statute can be trickier than folks at first appreciate.
Yeah, I think he's actually speaking a little off script here. He's very comfortable with this. He apparently is comfortable with that. But I'm not going to keep going with this guy. I'm going to find us a new instance. I want to go to another Democrat. Hang on. He's finishing an answer here regarding, he's basically making a long statement about the FBI, and it's mostly boring. He's just touting the company line. There are two important references here that I'm going to highlight, so I'm going to let it play and make a comment.
The FBI that I see is people, decent people, committed to the highest principles of integrity and professionalism and respect. The FBI that I see is respected and appreciated by our partners in federal, state, and local law enforcement, in the intelligence community, by our foreign counterparts, both law enforcement and national security, in something like 200 countries around the globe. That's the FBI that I see. Now, do we make mistakes? You bet we make mistakes, just like everybody who's human makes mistakes. And when we make mistakes, there are independent processes like that of the outside independent inspector general that will drive and dive deep into the facts surrounding those mistakes. And when that independent fact finding is complete, we will hold our folks accountable.
Yeah, there was a good pause there. The conclusion, right, of action based on the IG report, there's some question of what's going to really happen.
And national security in something like 200 countries around the globe. That's the FBI that I see. Now, do we make mistakes? You bet we make mistakes, just like everybody who's human makes mistakes. And when we make mistakes, there are independent processes like that of the outside independent inspector general that will drive and dive deep into the facts surrounding those mistakes. And when that independent fact finding is complete,
then what, my friend? Then what happens? What are you gonna do when it's complete, huh? I mean, the IG is tough. They're gonna come up with a report, and it's look, I'll be very surprised if the IG report doesn't call out that the FBI acted incorrectly. And again, I'm not even claiming that I know the truth and the consequence and the punishment for mishandling the classified emails. I'm just sick and tired of people not calling out what it is. You mishandle classified data, you acknowledge it, and life moves on. You mishandle classified data, you don't acknowledge it. You claim that it was nothing. People go to jail, lose their jobs for mishandling classified data. This is not a petty matter. It's a big deal. And you got to imagine that the level of classified data that Hillary Clinton had was as high as it comes. State Department, worldwide. I'm looking forward to seeing the IG report, frankly. Can't wait. That'll be awesome.
we will hold our folks accountable if that's appropriate.
It's very fine. Thank you very much. I yield back.
That pause. He's not sure. He knows there's a big question mark to what happens after the report comes back. That's when the fight starts. So now we have Steve Chabot, Republican from Ohio. He kind of lays out the case, a case. You can have your opinion about the points he makes. I'm particularly of the opinion that uh, you can't find. Just make the assumption that you cannot find investigators that have displayed zero bias to someone. I mean, how much more private of a setting do you have than a text message between two people? I mean, if you can't express your personal beliefs in a private message between two people, where can you do it? I don't think that's basis for removal, but I can see the point. Let's go through it. I don't want to highlight the case itself. I want to highlight Mr. Wray's expression. Look what happens at the end of Mr. Chabot's introduction.
Now, as someone who sat on this committee, the Judiciary Committee that has oversight of the Justice Department and the FBI for over 20 years now, such a statement is, at least at first, shocking. But when you look at a few facts, it's understandable why the president might make such a statement. A former head of the FBI, Robert Mueller, is put in charge of an important investigation. And who does he pick to be on his team? Well, you'd want people who are experienced and smart and, most importantly, unbiased. Because whatever you do, the result is going to be second-guessed. One side or the other is going to be dissatisfied, critical. So above all things, they've got to at least appear to be fair and unbiased. So who does Mueller pick? He picked 16 attorneys. 9 of the 16, more than half, have given money to the Obama campaign or the Clinton campaign or both. And nobody has given a cent to Donald Trump or his campaign. Does that show a lack of bias? Does that show fairness? I think the American people can decide that for themselves. And perhaps even more shocking, we recently learned that one of those supposedly unbiased investigators on the Mueller team was a guy named Peter Strzok. Turns out Strzok was sending out anti-Trump, pro-Clinton messages, so he ultimately got canned from the investigation. The question is, how did this guy get on Mueller's supposedly unbiased team in the first place, when you consider that this is the same guy that had a key position investigating the Hillary Clinton email server scandal and apparently had a hand in altering the FBI's conclusion that Clinton was grossly negligent down to extremely careless so she could escape prosecution and thus stay in the race against Donald Trump. And now we learn that the number 2 guy on Mueller's team, Andrew Weissman, is just as biased as Strzok.
Okay. Mr. Chabot is going on his rant, and take it for what it is, agree with it or don't agree with it. It's a line of reasoning that's matched by many people. Mr. Wray put his hand over his face. That's a big deal. That's a big deal. Now here's an audience member listening to the narrative from Mr. Chabot, and you can't tell if he likes it or dislikes it, but he's definitely enthralled by it, totally sucked in. Mr. Wray knows where this is going, covers his face, doesn't want to say anything. This is porcupine territory for him. Let's see what happens.
He made an anti-Trump communication to the since-fired Sally Yates, and the depths of this anti-Trump bias on the Mueller team, it just goes on and on. It's absolutely shocking. Director Wray, I know all this took place before you took the helm at the FBI, but none other than the President of the United States has said that an organization that most Americans, including myself, hold in the highest esteem, the FBI, is in tatters. What can you do, what will you do to restore confidence in the premier law enforcement agency?
This guy is very self-aware. He sensed the question or the statement was wrapping up. He removed his face from his hand from his face. readjusted himself, shoulders forward, fully engaged. Again, he's got nothing to lose today. He hasn't done anything, right? So he wants to commit to the least amount of future actions as possible and try to be as understanding and accommodating to the complaints and comments of these Congress folks. Let's see if his answer is interesting, but I'm about to shift over to the next speaker.
Agency in the world.
Congressman, I appreciate the question and the reason for the question.
Well, the only reason he'd appreciate the question, the reason for the question, is that he prepared for this answer. I mean, this is not a good question. I mean, it's not one that you want to receive. It's not a fluff question. It's tough. This man basically just said your agency behaved in a way that seems, to my view, wrong. That's what Mr. Chabot is saying. So, how do you respond to the fact that I think your agency sucks? Right? That's the question. No, it's not a good question. It's not one that you look forward to answering unless you've prepared an answer ahead of time. Let's move on to the next guy. I mean, really, I remember watching this. He doesn't give off anything interesting here. He goes through standard uh, canned answers and closes it up by saying that when the IG investigation is over, we'll see what we see. He's going to close up the interview now with Mr. Chabot from Ohio, and I'm gonna let it play into Zoe, but uh, he again reminds everyone about the IG investigation. He just spent a few minutes praising the FBI and its agents and how great they are, but that if the IG finds something wrong, that he'll take action. Uh, let's see how that goes.
Rather than have the FBI investigate itself, having an outside inspector general.
I'm noticing a pattern with the forehead, the wrinkling. Uh, when he's emotionally vested into it, he'll use his eyebrows when he's engaged. So he's got a decent amount of body expression. He's gonna be a good one to follow for future speeches and public appearances. Let's see. Let's see.
Do the investigation and report to all of us on the findings, I think is one of the best things I can do. And then based on that information, I won't hesitate to take appropriate action based on what it is he finds.
Thank you, and I'm almost out of time, but let me
Finish the sentence well. You notice his mouth went straight to shut, double swallow. Okay, it's locked. That's the secret code. When I close my mouth and I chew twice, it's locked now. Nothing else comes out until the next question.
Let me ask you, would you as FBI director, for example, ever permit associates of someone under investigation who themselves could also be under investigation to sit in an interview with the accused?
Well,
You know this is coming from. And if you read into how Flynn was investigated, Flynn wasn't read his rights. He wasn't warned that he was being investigated and that the questions that he was answering were under the premise of an investigation. Hillary was. So Flynn, because he was having a casual conversation with an FBI agent that was invited into his office by Sally Yates, by the way, answers things to this person that he doesn't know and doesn't tell him about specific conversations, which were all legal. He just told the FBI that he didn't have them. But because because he told the FBI under what he thought was a casual setting that he wasn't having this conversation, he didn't know who to trust. Then he gets charged with a crime. Hillary Clinton goes into the FBI for an interview, never gets sworn in. The interview doesn't get recorded, and nothing happens to her. And the things that she said are now proven to be lies, untrue. And I really hate using the word lie. Lie is intent to deceit. You can make mistakes and say things that are untrue. That doesn't make it a lie. And I think we conflate that a lot. But we know that the things that she said in the FBI that day in June were untrue. Flynn gets condemned, charged, found, agrees to a plea for saying something that's untrue. Let's see what happens here.
I will say this, having been, as I said to Congressman Nadler, both a line prosecutor and a Justice Department official, but then also a defense attorney, that's not my experience as the normal practice. I'm also, however, reluctant to ever answer questions, as you can appreciate, with a hypothetical about whether I would ever do something, because every investigation is subject to its own unique circumstances.
I certainly understand it, because that's exactly what happened in the so-called investigation of Hillary Clinton, and I yield back my time.
All right, a little more interesting observations here. Well, actually, that's an interesting freeze frame, almost like he's raising a fist, going, "Yay! I got through another one." But he's resetting. He's very comfortable in a public setting. He's very comfortable. But like you remember Comey. Comey was comfortable, but there was definitely a sort of a smugness, a superiority about his stance. I'm not detecting that from Wray. And Comey displayed that from the very first meeting. Like, I know what's best for everyone. I know what's going on. Go away. I'll answer your petty questions if I feel like it. Right? He was above it all. I don't get that from Wray.
The chair recognizes the gentlewoman from California, Ms. Lofgren, for 5
Well,
minutes.
thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Director, for being here today, and thanks to you.
Is it wrong that before I even read her name, I looked at this picture and I said, she's a feminist, she's a Democrat, and she's from California. I knew nothing about this woman. I just saw this picture. Well, I mean, obviously it's a prejudice, right? I obviously don't see feminists, oversized women from California very well. And anyway, it turns out that I was right on all 3 counts. I know there's something I got to work on, but I'm not pulling these ideas out of thin air.
You for your leadership of this agency, and to the men and women who work so hard to protect our country and to serve the United States. We all appreciate it, even though we might have a few questions. My first question, has to do with cybersecurity. There's a rapidly growing threat of cyber attacks at all levels, federal, state, and local, business, personal level. And I was really...
Well, I guess there's no option here. I'm going to play through her remarks, but she conflates so much information. A lot of it is just false or unproven into these, quote unquote questions, just to get those statements on the record, and they get referenced later and so on. So I'll play through, and let's watch Wray as she starts to go down the line of statements, some of which are true, but most of which are unproven or plain false. How does he react to the statements as they happen, and how he answers the question? Well, here comes some horse crap. Look, I don't agree with that woman. By the way, she was very nice in the way she addressed him. So, again, I acknowledge my bias and prejudice. But here comes the BS down the pipe. And she's going to conflate and make the assertion that Russia hacked the DNC and all these hacks. I actually want to know who this person is. He's making some very interesting facial expressions. And by the way, somebody needs to donate a neck to this man. He was born without one. He's got a head and he's got shoulders, but this guy's neck is wider than his head. Seriously, could you create a cartoon picture of a strong soldier, regular sort of Aryan race, white soldier? No. Square face, perfect nose, like you designed this guy in a lab. He's gonna be a soldier. No kidding, man. Let's see what happens here.
Example, and I assume what you're describing is the current practice. When the Democratic National Committee was hacked by the Russians, The FBI contacted an intern. They never contacted the chairman of the DNC. She found out, months later. So hopefully those types of procedures have been revised. Do you know that?
I think the procedures themselves remain the same, and the procedures themselves, I think, are pretty sound. The question of, but if you think about what they are questions that the investigators have to ask in each victim notification context.
Let me go. When we had the Attorney General here recently, we asked, there's an ongoing effort to hack into the election system. We know that from various reports. And the Attorney General said really nothing was going on, that he hadn't been able to pay. I'm paraphrasing. He would say it's really important, we haven't spent enough time on it. I'm getting the sense that that's true across the government. In fact, we've got systems that were hacked within a half an hour at DEFCON by state voting systems. What is the...
There's a lot of stuff about the voting system that we're going to dig up and find out very soon. It is the first time that I noticed that he may have done it before. He actually wrote something down. I saw him reaching for the pen a few times, but he's actually writing this one down. I'm not sure that it's going to go anywhere, but he's a document taker. Unlike Comey, who claimed to be, but I never saw him reaching for a pen and paper. This guy reached for it very naturally. Okay, let's keep going.
The FBI doing relative to preserving the integrity of the voting structure itself?
I think the focus on Russia is the wrong focus for validating the integrity of our election systems. Again, I think a lot of dirt will come out. It's always interesting to watch this watch these videos with a body language sort of mindset around it, and not only to observe the main parties, but the sideline parties. This is another very interesting individual. I think this is a man. Not that it matters, but the excessive jewelry. If you're a woman whose face isn't very feminine, you tend to always let your hair grow long. It's a very clear sign that you're a female. Very short hair. I don't see an Adam's apple, but something about it. If this is a woman, she did a great job in looking like a transsexual person. If this is a man, pretty decent job in looking like a woman. But again, side note, it's not a prejudice. Sometimes it's clear this person wants to be identified as a woman, whether it's a woman or not. Sometimes you see people that I truly can't tell if they... I mean, never mind what gender they actually are, but what are they portraying? It's very confusing. They kind of dress like a tomboy, and you can't tell if it's a guy that's a little effeminate or a girl who's a little masculine. I'm very confused by those. But this is clearly someone who wants to be addressed as a she, right? A female. Side note. Let's go.
For the next election.
Mr. Chairman, I see my time. May I answer that one?
Yes,
thank you. Well, I think the FBI is actually very focused on this subject. It's one of the things that I've tried to insist on upon arriving. We have a foreign influence task force that we stood up that brings together both our counterintelligence division, our cyber division, and our criminal division, as well as some other parts of the Bureau. We are in coordination through that task force with DHS, which of course has responsibility for a lot of the election infrastructure.
Yeah, I find this whole, you can talk about coordination of agencies all day long, but why do we have so many? Why do we have a DHS? Like, what was the need for that? Like, what was wrong with the very basic idea of the main facets of security? You got your military, mostly to be deployed overseas, in action. You got your investigative agencies, intelligence agency, like the CIA. Don't get me started on the NSA. And then you've got your US-bound investigative agency, the FBI. You got prosecutorial powers across states and federal lines. Why do we need more intelligence agencies? I don't get it. It's so confusing right now. It's a mess.
Along with states. We are in contact with our foreign partners because, as you know, efforts to interfere with elections are occurring in other countries as well. And so that by doing that with our close relationships with our foreign counterparts, we learn more about tradecraft methods and things like that. So we're acutely focused on looking out for signs of interference in the 2018 or 2020 election cycle.
If I may, Mr. Chair, I know my time is up, but I hope that there is an effort by the Bureau to communicate with state election officers who oftentimes have been kept in the dark, and I yield back.
As we close this interview, and I'm closing the tape, there's plenty more to see, but this video is too long already. But you noticed when she makes the assertion that Russia hacked the DNC, zero reaction from him. Zero. And he knows. He knows how to behave. And again, mouth shut, locked in tight, couple of swallows. Next. This guy's good. I'm looking forward to seeing more interviews from him. I mean, I'm looking forward to some action from him. But this is someone that I'm going to look forward to seeing interviews of or public statements. I do hope you enjoyed your first trip with me. Again, we reviewed the the interview of Christopher Wray, Director of the FBI, in front of Congress in these turbulent times. If you got suggestions for new titles, new folks to look at, please leave them below. I do so much look forward to feedback and comments. I have several other ideas on how to take this little project, but I am I'm excited to take on the challenge. I really like this topic. I've appreciated there's a few other YouTubers who do it. Bombardi does a great job. But I like what she does. I just wanted something else, and here I am. All right, folks. See you later. Be good to each other in all things.